You are performing your insignificance every single day, and you don't even realize it. You wake up, you perform the rituals of modern servitude, and you call it living. But here's what's actually happening. You are actively constructing the prison of your own irrelevance, brick by brick, hour by hour, with every decision you make that places someone else's evaluation of you above your own cold assessment of reality. You think you're being good. You think you're being moral. You think you're playing the game correctly. You're not. You're being domesticated. And the most tragic part, you've learned to call this domestication virtue. Let me tell you what Niccolo Machiavelli understood that you don't. Power is not a reward for goodness. Value is not a participation trophy. And the currency of human interaction is not kindness. It is necessity. When you make yourself necessary, you become valuable. When you make yourself pleasant, you become furniture, comfortable, familiar, utterly replaceable. This is the first truth that most people spend their entire lives running from, because accepting it means confronting something unbearable, that everything you were taught about how to succeed in life was designed to make you easy to control, not powerful. The moment you understand this, truly understand it, your entire framework for existence collapses. And that collapse is exactly where your reconstruction begins. You have been taught to sacrifice your advantage for the appearance of virtue. Not actual virtue, appearance. You negotiate against yourself before you ever enter a room. You diminish your accomplishments to seem humble. You suppress your demands to seem reasonable. You betray your interests to seem cooperative. And you have convinced yourself this is wisdom, when it is actually the systematic destruction of your leverage in every interaction you have. This is not philosophy. This is conditioning, and it has made you weak. Society requires a certain number of people to remain in a state of voluntary subordination. It needs people who will accept less, demand nothing, and feel grateful for the scraps. The entire apparatus of socialization, from childhood education to corporate culture to the moral frameworks you inherited without questioning, is designed to produce this psychological state. They teach you that ambition is selfish, that wanting more is greedy, that operating from self-interest is somehow morally inferior to operating from a naive belief that the world rewards the self-sacrificing. It doesn't. The world eats them. You internalize this so deeply that you now police yourself. You don't need external authority to keep you in line anymore because you have installed the guard tower inside your own mind. When you feel the impulse to demand what you deserve, you suppress it. When you recognize an opportunity to advance yourself at someone else's expense, you hesitate. When you calculate the cold, strategic move that would elevate your position, you choose instead the right thing, which is almost always the thing that benefits everyone except you. Let me ask you something. What has this gotten you? I don't mean what has it gotten you in terms of feeling good about yourself. I mean in terms of actual tangible power, in terms of resources, in terms of the ability to shape your circumstances rather than be shaped by them, in terms of other people's need for you, their dependence on you, their inability to easily replace you, because that is the only metric that matters. Everything else is aesthetic. Everything else is the performance of virtue for an audience that will forget you the moment you stop being useful to them. You think people respect you for your fairness. They don't. They exploit it. You think your loyalty makes you valuable. It makes you predictable. You think your willingness to compromise demonstrates maturity. It demonstrates that you can be moved, which means you have already lost the negotiation before it began. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in 1513, and the book was so disturbing to the moral sensibilities of his time that it was placed on the papal index of forbidden books. 500 years later, people still recoil from it. Not because it's wrong, but because it's true. And the truth is that power operates according to principles that have nothing to do with what you were taught in church or school, or by well-meaning people who themselves have no power. The Prince is not a manual for cruelty, it is a manual for effectiveness. And effectiveness requires you to abandon the comforting delusions that keep you domesticated. Here is what Machiavelli understood that you need to tattoo on your consciousness. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But more fundamentally, it is better to be necessary than liked, because when you are necessary, you have leverage. When you are merely liked, you are an accessory. When you are an accessory, you are expendable. The entire project of increasing your value is the project of making yourself difficult to replace, not through loyalty, not through agreeableness, not through how hard you work or how nice you are, through the possession of capabilities, knowledge, connections, and resources that other people need and cannot easily obtain elsewhere. This is the architecture of power. Everything else is decoration. Value is a function of scarcity and demand. This is not capitalism. This is physics. This is the underlying mathematics of all human exchange, whether we're talking about economics or relationships or career advancement or social status. You are valuable to the degree that you are scarce and needed. When you make yourself abundant, when you are always available, always accommodating, always willing to adjust yourself to others' requirements, you destroy your own value. You become the opposite of what you're trying to be. You become forgettable. Watch how the powerful operate. They do not explain themselves constantly. They do not seek consensus. They do not make themselves endlessly available. They create distance. They cultivate mystery. They withhold access as a tool of leverage. When they grant their time or attention or resources, it means something because it is not automatic. This is not arrogance. This is strategy. This is the conscious construction of value through the management of scarcity. You do the opposite. You over-explain. You seek to be understood by people who have no investment in understanding you. You make yourself available to everyone, which means you are special to no one. You give away your time, your energy, your insights, your labor, and you receive in return the psychological wage of being appreciated. But appreciation is not power. Appreciation does not pay your rent. Appreciation does not give you leverage in negotiation. Appreciation is what people offer when they don't want to give you what you actually need. The Machiavellian approach to value is simple. Control the supply. You are the supply. When you flood the market with yourself, with your availability, your willingness, your accommodation, you crash your own price. When you restrict access, when you become selective, when you make people earn your time and attention and expertise, you create the perception of value. And perception, in human affairs, is reality. This is where most people fail. They think value is intrinsic. They think if they just work hard enough, if they just do a good enough job, if they just demonstrate enough competence, the value will be recognized. It won't. Because recognition is a political act, not an objective assessment. Recognition is given to those who command it, who make it necessary, who structure the situation such that withholding recognition becomes costly to the other party. If you sit around waiting to be discovered, you will wait forever. If you make yourself indispensable, discovery becomes irrelevant. Consider the predator. The predator does not chase every potential meal. It selects. It waits. It strikes only when the conditions maximize success and minimize risk. It does not exhaust itself in pursuit of prey that isn't worth the energy expenditure. The prey, meanwhile, scatters in every direction, burning itself out in panic. The predator conserves its energy for the kill that matters. The prey dies tired. You have been operating like prey, reactive, scattered, exhausting yourself in response to every demand, every request, every expectation placed upon you by people who have no stake in your advancement. You need to become the predator, selective, patient, moving only when movement serves your strategic interest. This is not cruelty. This is efficiency. This is the refusal to waste your finite energy on infinite demands. Here is a pattern you need to break. You enter every negotiation having already decided what you're willing to accept, and it's always less than what you deserve. You pre-compromise. You determine the reasonable request before you make any request at all. You diminish yourself proactively to avoid the discomfort of being told no. And then you wonder why you never get what you want. The powerful do the opposite. They ask for more than they expect to receive, understanding that the negotiation is a process of convergence, not a single offer. They anchor high. They make the other party work to bring them down. And even when they compromise, they do so slowly, extracting maximum value for every concession. They never negotiate against themselves. But you do. You do it constantly. You do it in salary negotiations where you lowball yourself because you don't want to seem greedy. You do it in relationships where you suppress your needs because you don't want to seem demanding. You do it in every interaction where you could claim more but choose not to because you've internalized the belief that claiming is wrong. And every time you do this, you reinforce your own subordination. You teach people that you can be had for cheap. And once they learn that, they never unlearn it. Machiavelli would tell you this: the prince who appears weak invites conquest. It does not matter if you are actually weak. What matters is the appearance. And when you negotiate against yourself, when you diminish yourself proactively, you create the appearance of weakness. You signal that you do not value yourself highly, and people believe you. Why wouldn't they? You're the expert on your own worth, and you just told them you're not worth much. This has to stop. You need to understand that your reticence to claim what you deserve is not humility. It is cowardice dressed up as virtue. It is the fear of rejection masquerading as reasonableness, and it is the single greatest obstacle to your advancement. Here's what changes when you stop negotiating with yourself. You enter the room with a different posture. You make demands you previously would have considered unreasonable. And you discover something shocking. Often people meet them, not always, but often enough that you realize the only thing preventing you from getting what you want was your unwillingness to ask for it. The world is full of resources and opportunities and advantages, and they go to the people who claim them, not the people who deserve them, not the people who need them, the people who claim them. This is the fundamental asymmetry of power. The ruthless claim everything they can get. The conscientious claim only what they believe they deserve. The ruthless win, not because they're smarter or harder working or more capable, because they're willing to take what the conscientious leave on the table out of misplaced propriety. You need to become ruthless, not in the sense of cruelty, in the sense of absolute commitment to your interests, in the sense of refusing to leave anything on the table, in the sense of understanding that every resource you don't claim, someone else will, and they won't share it with you out of gratitude that you were so polite. There are two kinds of value in any hierarchy: fungible value and unique value. Fungible value is what you provide that anyone else could provide with enough training. Unique value is what only you provide, or what you provide better than anyone else available. Most people spend their entire careers building fungible value. They become good at their jobs, they show up on time, they do what's asked of them, and they are shocked when they're replaced by someone younger and cheaper, or when their years of loyalty are rewarded with a cost-cutting layoff. This happens because they made themselves replaceable. They built their value on doing what was assigned, not on creating conditions where they could not be easily substituted. They were the human equivalent of a commodity, and commodities are valued on price, not quality. Unique value is different. Unique value comes from controlling something other people need but cannot easily get elsewhere. It comes from knowledge they don't have, from relationships you've cultivated that they don't have access to, from a reputation that takes years to build and cannot be transferred, from the ability to solve problems that only emerge in complex situations and that require judgment, not just execution. The Machiavellian project is the systematic construction of unique value. You do this not by becoming a generalist who can do anything adequately, but by becoming the person who can do specific, critical things that very few others can do. You identify the choke points in your organization, your industry, your market. You position yourself at those choke points. You become the person who has to be consulted, who has to sign off, who has to be involved. You make yourself the single point of failure, which means you become the last person they can afford to lose. This sounds manipulative. It is. But manipulation is just strategy that makes people uncomfortable, and strategy is essential, because the alternative is to be valuable at the discretion of people who will revoke that designation the moment it becomes convenient. You need to engineer a situation where revoking your value is more painful than maintaining it. Think of this as building a fortress. A fortress is valuable not because of the materials it's made from, but because of what it controls. It sits on high ground. It oversees trade routes or water sources or strategic terrain. The fortress itself might be stone and mortar, replaceable components, but its position makes it irreplaceable. You need to become the fortress, not the stone. You need to control the terrain, not just occupy space. This means you have to think several moves ahead. When you take on a project, you don't just execute it. You make sure that you're the only one who fully understands how it works. When you build relationships, you don't just network. You create dependencies. You become the person who connects other people to each other, which means all those relationships route through you. When you develop expertise, you don't document everything in a way that makes you replaceable. You create a situation where your departure would cause significant disruption. Is this selfish? Absolutely. But selfishness is not a vice in the context of power. It is a requirement. The people who succeed are not the people who subsume themselves to the collective good. They are the people who understand that the collective will consume them if they allow it to, and who therefore protect their position with the same ferocity with which a nation protects its borders. All of this requires a psychological transformation that most people never achieve. You have to kill the part of yourself that seeks approval. You have to eliminate the need to be liked. You have to become comfortable with the fact that exercising power makes you unpopular with people who have no power, and that's fine because their opinion of you doesn't matter. What matters is that they need you. This is the hardest part, because you have been trained since birth to care about what people think of you. Your entire reward system is built on social approval. When people like you, you feel good. When they don't, you feel bad. This makes you controllable, because anyone who can make you feel good or bad has power over you. They can give you the treat of approval or withhold it as punishment, and you will modify your behavior to get the treat. You are a trained animal, and the treat is being liked. The sovereign mind does not operate this way. The sovereign evaluates actions based on outcomes, not on how those actions will be perceived. The sovereign asks, does this increase my power or decrease it? Does this advance my position or compromise it? Does this make me more necessary or less? And based on those calculations, the sovereign acts. If the action makes people uncomfortable, that's irrelevant. If it makes people dislike you, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is whether it worked. Machiavelli counseled his prince to be willing to be thought cruel if cruelty achieves order. He understood that the prince who tries to be loved by everyone ends up being manipulated by everyone. The prince who is feared, who is known to act decisively in his own interest, who cannot be moved by appeals to sentiment, who calculates coldly and executes ruthlessly, that prince maintains his position, not because he's mean, because he's clear. People know where they stand with him. There is no ambiguity. And in the absence of ambiguity, there is respect. You have been ambiguous your entire life. You have tried to be all things to all people. You have adjusted yourself to every audience, modified your position to avoid conflict, softened your edges to avoid giving offense. And in doing so, you have become indistinct. You are a blur. Nobody knows what you actually stand for because you've never stood for anything long enough to find out. This ends now. You need to become legible. You need to become someone whose positions are clear, whose boundaries are firm, whose priorities are non-negotiable. This will cost you. Some people will not like it. Some relationships will not survive it. Some opportunities will close to you. Good. Because what you're filtering out is everyone who wanted access to you at terms that disadvantaged you. What remains are the people and opportunities that meet you at your actual value. This is liberation, not comfort. Liberation. The ability to move through the world as yourself, not as the performance of what other people want you to be. The ability to claim what you want, demand what you need, and refuse what doesn't serve you. The ability to construct your life according to your vision, not according to the aggregated expectations of everyone who thinks they have a vote in your choices. When you do this, when you actually commit to this path, you will become someone different. Your friends will notice. Your family will notice. They will be uncomfortable with it. They will tell you you've changed. They will miss the old you who was convenient, the old you who could be relied upon to accommodate, the old you who didn't make them examine their own choices by choosing differently. You will become lonelier. This is not a side effect. This is the point, because the version of you that everyone could access easily was not valuable. The version of you that restricts access, that has standards, that cannot be taken for granted, that version is valuable. And valuable things are, by definition, not universally accessible. People will interpret your boundaries as arrogance. Let them. Their interpretation is irrelevant. What matters is whether those boundaries serve your interests. People will interpret your selectivity as coldness. Let them. You are not here to be warm. You are here to be effective. People will say you've lost your humanity. What they mean is you've stopped being useful to them at your own expense, and they don't like it. This is the cost of sovereignty. You will be misunderstood. You will be criticized. You will be accused of caring only about yourself. And all of this will be true, at least from the perspective of people who benefited from your previous self-negation. But their perspective is not your concern. Your concern is the construction of a life where you have agency, where you have leverage, where you have power. And that construction requires you to be willing to disappoint people who never had your best interests at heart to begin with. Here's what you gain. You gain the ability to move through the world on your terms. You gain the capacity to decline opportunities that don't serve you without guilt. You gain relationships built on mutual value rather than on your constant concession. You gain respect from people who actually matter because they recognize that you cannot be manipulated. You gain the strange peace that comes from operating with clarity, from making decisions based on strategy rather than on the management of other people's emotions. You become dangerous, not in the sense of physical threat, in the sense that you cannot be controlled through the usual mechanisms. You don't need approval. You don't need to be liked. You don't need to fit in. What you need is to advance your position, and you're willing to do what that requires. This makes you unpredictable to people who are used to predicting you. This makes you powerful. Most people will read this and do nothing. They will recognize the truth in it. They will feel the pull of it. And then they will go back to their lives and continue performing their own subordination because the alternative is too frightening. The alternative requires them to become someone they've never been, to make choices they've never made, to operate according to principles that contradict everything they were taught was good. You are probably one of those people, and that's fine. The world needs a population of people who don't claim their power, because that's where the powerful draw their resources from. Someone has to be exploited in order for exploitation to work. Someone has to be accommodating in order for the ruthless to take advantage. Someone has to be fair in a world that isn't. That someone is probably you. But if you're not, if there's a part of you that is tired of being overlooked, tired of being undercompensated, tired of watching people with less competence but more willingness to self-advocate surpass you, then you have to make a choice. And you have to make it completely. You can't do this halfway. You can't adopt the posture of power while still seeking the comfort of being liked. You can't build a fortress while leaving the gates open for anyone who wants to wander in. You can't become sovereign while still performing for an audience. This requires a death. The death of the version of you that needed to be good. The death of the version of you that measured success by how much people appreciated you. the death of the version of you that gave away your power because you were afraid of what owning it would cost. That version has to die, and you have to be the one who kills it. Nobody else will do it for you. Nobody else can. What emerges from that death is not a monster. It's a person who understands that power is not given as a reward for virtue. It is taken as a consequence of strategy. It's a person who has stopped negotiating against themselves. It's a person who has learned to operate in the world as it is, not as they wish it were. It's a person who has built value through scarcity, necessity, and the ruthless protection of their interests. It's a person who cannot be easily replaced. That person is worth more than the person you are now, not morally, practically, in every measurable dimension of life that matters. And if you want to become that person, you know what you have to do. You have to start making different choices. You have to start claiming what you previously left on the table. You have to start saying no to demands that don't serve you. You have to start building your fortress instead of just occupying space. This will be difficult. This will be lonely. This will require you to abandon comforting fictions and operate according to cold truth. But difficulty is the price of transformation. Loneliness is the price of sovereignty, and cold truth is the only foundation on which real power can be built. Subscribe to this channel if you're committed to that path, not for entertainment, not for motivation, for the systematic deconstruction of the conditioning that has kept you weak, and the systematic reconstruction of yourself as someone who cannot be controlled. The content here is not designed to make you feel good. It's designed to make you effective, and effectiveness requires you to become someone different than who you are. The choice is yours. Make it count.